Is magic real?
There's the trick I'll teach you and your subscribers.
I mean, you know how you do your magic. Is it real for you?
I can make you feel something absolutely amazing if you'll let me.
They're all aces. All four. How the...
There we go. Don't end with the foam penis because Granny's gonna have a heart attack.
The magician's code, is it real?
In theory, yeah. So I think once my dad actually had to call into work and say, I can't come in. And they're like, why? Like, because there's a lion sitting on me. Christian was a sweetie, apparently. Like, he never hurt anyone. He never attacked any animals. And then there's the YouTube video, which is a lion called Christian, which shows the reunion. And I did it, and I got 2 hours of piss off, fuck off, don't know, go away, you weirdo.
Can you talk about the story with the Sony Xperia commercial?
Of course I can. And then my video's been posted on the Magic Circle, and the magicians were pissed.
Yeah.
The first thing anyone said looked at me and went, oh, I fucking hate magic. No, you don't. You hate shit magic. You're not going up against other magicians. You're going up against every shit magician they've ever seen. And then I'll perform it, and someone will lose their mind. And I'm going, really? Because I did the really amazing one 5 minutes ago and you didn't care. But this one, this is the one that gets you work. Okay.
You perform for celebrities and for a royal family.
Do you use magic to get laid?
All right, now, teach me magic. Hi, I'm Andrei Rogozin, and this is Beyond Real Talk, a podcast where I invite real entertainment industry professionals and ask them real questions. What are they actually doing? How are they doing it? Why are they doing it? And how can you start doing the same thing? And my today's guest is an international magician who performed in Australia, America, India, China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Europe, a member of the exclusive Magic Circle. He was London's Magician of the Year 2021. And he's a man who amazed me with his skills on multiple occasions and made me believe that magic is real. Max Rendall.
Hi Andre, thanks for having me, man.
Hey, was everything correct?
Yeah, it was all pretty spot on. I'm actually no longer a member of the Magic Circle.
Oh, you're not?
No, I decided, I left, this year I actually left, I stopped being a member as I just kind of, I wasn't getting enough out of it. It's very widely recognized as kind of like, I say widely recognized, there are a lot of people in particularly older generations who kind of will ask the question, oh, are you a member of the Magic Circle? Mm-hmm. A lot of people of our generation and younger either don't know what it is or don't care. It's much more of like a group of magicians now coming together, sharing secrets, which is wonderful, but I found myself very rarely having the time to be a part of the group, and it wasn't giving me enough back, so and that's probably my fault for not necessarily getting involved enough, but I ended up going, you know what, it's not actually an essential thing anymore, and so I've removed their branding from my bits and pieces, and we've parted ways.
You know, since Dumbledore died. We'll talk about Magic Circle later, just in case. But before we start all the conversation about magic, about how you got into it, I want to ask you another question. So, in 2013, you did TED Talk.
Yes, I did. I did a TED Talk, yes.
Yes, and you showed the video, and you were talking about this case of, you know, your father and a lion named Christian.
Yes.
Is that true?
It's 100% true, yeah. So in the 1970s, when my dad, or maybe 1969, my dad moved over from Australia with his best friend, and they were working in a furniture shop together when they decided, they'd heard a story about how Harrods had this incredible pet shop that you could go and buy any animal from.
Really? It was the case?
Yeah, it was the case. They were selling all kinds of animals. The story that got them interested was my dad had heard how a manager had taken a woman there on a date, and he'd said, what animal would you like? And she tried to be clever, and she's like, I want a camel. And the manager responded, do you want one hump or two? So my dad decided, okay, we got to go and check this place out. And they got there, and they had 2 lion cubs for sale. And my dad and his friend were, they saw the cubs, and if they could have, they'd have bought them both, but they pulled every bit of their last savings and they bought Christian. He was a little lion cub who was maybe a few months old at the time.
A lion in Harrods, in a shop, in the city of London.
Yeah, and then they brought him back to their furniture shop where they raised him, and that's where he lived. So they had in the basement they had a lot of disused furniture, which was just his playground essentially. Yeah. And they would take him for walks along the King's Road. They became very good friends with a local member of the parish. I think he was a vicar or something, and he had
and the butcher as well.
Well, the butcher, yeah, he provided a lot of the offcuts because he went through a lot of meat because they do. And there was a sort of a little park cemetery type thing. And they would take Christian there, they'd kick a ball around so he could chase the ball and actually have a run around off leash, but in an enclosed environment so that he was safe and other people were safe. And Christian was a sweetie, apparently. Like, he never hurt anyone, he never attacked any animals.
Oh, it's such a gamble, no?
It was in theory, but like, I think my dad said that they always had this sort of relationship of they could tell when he was showing signs of animosity, and it wasn't too often. There's actually a photo shoot, there's some photos going around where he's playing with some baby chicks. It was like an Easter shoot, and apparently Christian would sort of like push them around and knock them over, but he never tried to eat any of them because he was well fed, so he didn't feel the need to kind of like try and get more food.
Yeah, waste energy.
And so yeah, they kept him there. I mean, my favorite story is, so Christian he figured out he was abnormal. Like, he wasn't a normal, people were surprised to meet him all the time. And so he would sit in the window of the furniture shop looking out to the street, and he would stay perfectly still. And then a crowd of people would stop and look at him and be like, wow, he looks so realistic. And then he'd get up and move, and they'd all lose their mind and freak out. Oh my God, it's a lion! Go and like freak out.
Oh my God, I would probably shit my pants.
And so eventually word got out that my dad and his friend were raising a lion in London. They weren't alone. Like, in the documentaries, there's footage of people walking down the street with cheetahs and things. They weren't alone. It was just so happened that Dad was a very personable guy, and they ended up meeting Elsa and George Adamson were recommended to them, and they ran a reserve out in Africa, and some people who'd just done A Lion Called Elsa, which is another movie about rehabilitation, and they put my dad in touch with them. And then, because Christian by this point was like nearly a year old, so he's getting quite big, and they were kind of aware of the fact of like, we cannot keep him here forever because he is a lion. There's a level of insanity we can abide by. And eventually they were able to take him out to Africa, and while out there, they went out with him for a few weeks, and they were hanging out with him. And they had a great time out there until eventually George Adamson, who ran the foundation, turned to them and said, like, look, you're gonna have to go home because he will never rehabilitate while you're here, because he'll just keep coming in and he'll want to hang out with you. He's attached to you. And so they left, and they got occasional updates, and then a year passes when eventually they start talking to George again, and they decide, like, can we come and visit him? Can we come see Christian? And so they fly back out, and then they went looking for him, and then there's the YouTube video, which is A Lion Called Christian, which shows the reunion, which is when Christian sees them from the top of the cliff and comes running down and jumps up and barrels into them. And the one Christian, in the video, Christian jumps up on Ace, who was my dad's friend, and nuzzles my father, because Christian would jump on Ace and would sit on my father. So I think once my dad actually had to call into work and say, I can't come in. And they're like, why? Like, because there's a lion sitting on me.
And they're like, fuck off. Come on. You don't have to make up shit.
I think luckily by this point they'd already met Christian, but yeah, there was a point. He was renowned for sitting on my dad, which, and in the video that my dad's wearing blue, I think, but that was the reunion, 100% exactly how it happened.
They didn't know if he will recognize them, right?
So I asked my dad the same question, because of course I think there's lots of like joke videos now of like people getting mauled. People have done various spoofs of it. And no, my dad said that him and Ace, when they saw Christian, they knew instantly that he was excited to see them and wanted to be friends with them. And there was no fear. They were like, it's our old friend, we get to see him again.
Did they keep tap on him like for like later? How, you know?
So it's not in that particular YouTube video, which is the one that he's most well known for, but he actually goes back again a year later. And by this point, Christian's got a proper mane and really looking like a real lion. Yeah. And apparently my dad described it, he used the analogy, it was like visiting me as a teenager, in terms of it was a lot of, I love you, Dad, piss off. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because apparently there's the thing that when, I'm not sure about girls, but I think when boys grow up, they start to challenge their fathers, like, and just in general authority of their family.
The males will get kicked out of the pride because they will start to threaten the fathers.
But just even in people, you know, it's like it happens.
If you ever find the video where they do reunite the second time, you can see Christian is still very affectionate. He doesn't jump up, but there's a lot of like affection, and then he'll move away and sit down somewhere else. And that was, Dad was like, they got that vibe of like, we care about you, you love us, that's great, but also we don't need to be as involved as we were.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is so fascinating because I'm sure I've seen this video.
And then if you watch the original YouTube video, towards the end, there's an old guy walking around. He's George. He's the guy who helped rehabilitate the lions. My dad never was able to go back a third time because after the second return, George was shot by poachers. They came onto the land looking to do what poachers do, and George stood in front of them and said, "Get off my land." No, and they said, "Move or we'll shoot you." And he went, "I'm not moving," and they shot him. And then amazingly, apparently, because there were a bunch of people who also worked on the foundation and on the grounds, every animal, every time, they all came back one last time, and when they realized he wasn't there anymore or that he was gone, they never came back again.
Yeah.
So Christian went out into the wild. There is evidence to suggest he had children and they've lived on because the average size of lions is now bigger than it used to be, because he was actually I think he came from the Netherlands. Oh, really? Because he came from a zoo in the Netherlands. Yeah. Dad bought him in London, and then he was released to Africa. But the average size of lions is now bigger. But he never, as far as we're aware, he never turned up anywhere. Yeah. So he wasn't got by poachers. He probably lived a very happy natural life.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. This is a fascinating story, honestly. Like, you'll find the links to the videos in the description. All right, look. So, is magic real?
Well, I mean, I think so when I look at my daughter. It's a classic question. Everyone always wants to ask a magician, is magic real?
Yeah. I mean, you know how you do your magic. Is it real for you?
It's real for me in terms of when I see the effect it has on people and the way I feel when a trick goes well, and I've provided that kind of entertainment, that mind-bending impossibility to someone. I mean, is magic real? I think it is real to the person seeing it, because to them, their brain has literally just gone, but you've just broken everything I understand about the universe and how things work, cause and effect. It's all gone.
I've seen it. I've seen you do it, and that never asked how it's done, because I wanna believe.
And I think that's it. It's fascinating to me as a magician. We live in the world where, if you really want to, you can go online. You can probably try and track down the secret for how most tricks are done. Yeah. And most people I perform to don't want to. They'd rather keep that memory or that feeling, because there is no denying the way magic makes people feel. That's 100% real. Yeah.
No, it's true, because every time when I see some magic tricks, you know, like on TikTok or whatever, like there's like small ones. And like when they show you the trick, you're like, oh, wow, how do they do it? And then they show you how they do it, and you're like, well, then that's not interesting anymore. Like, it's not interesting, it doesn't amaze me, and it's just like, well, now I know, and what?
Yeah, there's the analogy I always use with people is a magic trick is a bit like a riddle, and when you don't know how it's done, it stays burrowed in your mind, and then as soon as you know how it's done, you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So where did you receive your letter to Hogwarts? How did it happen?
So I liked magic as a kid growing up. I think I tried learning a trick when I was at school, when I was about 14. Sort of went all right, didn't make much progress. I mean, growing up with my dad, we used to love watching Magician Secrets Revealed, that TV show with the masked magician. And yeah, I was always kind of aware of magic and I liked it, but I could never find a trick, like a way of learning magic that made it feasible, I think, for me to actually go on and perform it. So, you know, I used to get the kits and you'd play with them for half an hour and then you go, right, cool, I'm gonna go watch TV or play Lego or something. And it wasn't until I was about 20, I was at university.
What were you studying in university?
Combined degree of advanced mechanical engineering and commerce.
Well, I mean, to a degree, I guess maybe it helps you with, designing new tricks. Engineering.
In theory. And yeah, I think I was up late one night, I was in my room, and I can't remember exactly what I was doing. I was like scanning through YouTube videos, and I saw one with a magic trick which involved just 3 playing cards. It's quite a well-known trick. It's called This and That, and there's loads of people who perform it online. I remember seeing it because it is just 3 cards, and the whole trick, the one I saw anyway, it's the guy's hands and the 3 cards. They're in camera the whole time. He does the trick, and I remember thinking, excuse my language, fuck you, I can do that.
Yeah.
Like, how is that possible? And so I went and found, like, how is it done? Because it bugged me so much. I found an explanation for how it was done, a video that taught you how to do it. And I was like, I can do this. I could do this. So I went out and I made, I learned that if you take a bit of nail polish remover, you can remove the faces of cards so they become blank. So I created my own blank cards and wrote the words on them.
Yeah.
And it was some, not easy, but like basic sleight of hand. Learned how to do it. Did take me a while and a lot of practice before I felt comfortable showing it to anyone. Showed it to some friends and got a really good reaction. And I thought, okay, like maybe I'll learn a few bit of magic tricks. Maybe this will help me, meet a girl. I was an engineering student. I was lonely.
Isn't everything we do is to meet a girl?
Pretty much.
In the end, it's just like.
And so I learned that trick, and it was a big hit. And I thought, okay, I'll learn some more. And I found a guy doing he did a bunch of free tricks on YouTube. He showed you he did the trick, and then he'd show you how it was done, and it was quite a good explanation. They were very, again, basic fundamental tricks, nothing too complex. But I got the hang of them and learned some pretty basic rules. And then he was selling an online course for, I think, $60 or something. And I bought it. And I did it, and I learnt the tricks and learnt the extra bits, because it was actually a well-constructed course which promised lifetime access. I tried accessing it a few years ago, and it's not there anymore. Typical. But and then I think the big turning point was on week 3 or week 4 of the course. And by now I had a good couple of tricks under my sleeve. I could up my sleeve. And I was feeling pretty confident in my skills. And then the lesson was, you have to go and perform to people in the street who you don't know. Yeah. I hated that with such a passion. Yeah. But I went and I did it, and I got 2 hours of piss off, fuck off, don't know, go away, you weirdo. But the last 2 people I performed to with these girls, I say girls, they were lovely women. They were on a smoke break. I went up to them and they were like, yeah, sure, why not? Showed them my stuff, and they were blown away. And then they tipped me $100. And they said, is this your job? And
Wait a second, dollars. Where were you? Were you in Australia already?
I was in Sydney, yeah.
Okay. So how, just before we continue this conversation, how did you get to Sydney?
So dad was Australian.
Yeah.
And so I'm half Australian. And when I finished school and it came time for university, I thought I could go, to a local school or something in the UK, but I really wanted to reinvent myself and start from scratch. I'd been quite badly bullied at school, and thought, why not start a fresh start? I've got this Australian passport. Why not take advantage of it? I've got some great friends out there. And so, I decided to go to university at Sydney. Okay.
And so you get tipped $100, which is like $100 Australian dollars, but it's like 10 pence? Or no, I'm sorry. I apologize to my Australian viewers. I actually love Australians, and just dumb joke. You'll hear a lot of those today.
Yeah, I think nowadays it's probably like 60 quid. I think 60 pounds, thereabouts. So, but still a big deal. And they even asked me, is this your job? And I was like, maybe. And at that moment I thought, okay, there's really something to this. And so I really kind of doubled down, and I started looking at making it a real habit to be the guy who had cards on him or did tricks out and about. And not long after that, I was at a friend's house party, and I started doing a couple of tricks, got some good reactions and all. And one of the guys says, do you want a job? I said, that's very kind. I work in a bar. And he was like, no, do you want a job in my restaurant as a magician?
Ooh.
And I went, yes. And so I quit my bar job and started making $50 a night, once a week. But hey, I was over the moon.
Of course.
Got really into it, loved it. Got my first ever death threat.
What? I'm sorry. Can you expand on that?
So it turned out another magician already had the gig, and he was charging, I think, $150 a night. And so he did not appreciate being pushed out. It wasn't even him who gave me the death threat. It was actually his friend on his behalf who sent me the death threat.
That's deadly business.
Apparently,
Magic, right?
Yeah.
Wow. And how did you resolve the situation?
I found it funny mostly because I know magicians aren't normally the most threatening of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I took it with a pinch of salt. I think I showed it to a few friends and they all laughed similarly. And funny, I think it was a sort of separate thing, but a few years later, I did a TV pilot for MTV, and that same guy who gave me the death threat was also in the pilot. He actually helped us. He was in the show. Yeah. He came and performed at the theater I was working at the time, and yeah.
Interesting.
So I was working at this restaurant. I was there quite regularly, and I started to get private bookings, and I began to Up until that point, I'd been a very card-focused magician. It had all been about cards, because I'd love the idea of if I have a deck of cards, that's all I need, and I can do everything. And I didn't want a rigged pack, because I didn't want the spectators to not be able to handle the cards if they wanted to. And from there, I started getting private bookings. People started inviting me to birthday parties and paying me, which was crazy. And then I was at a family friend's, I think it was like a charity auction event. And after the event was over, I was hanging out with my family friends and the people that they were close with, because I was no longer performing. And one of them was asking me if I was interested in doing anything else with magic. And I obviously said yes, I'm really enjoying it. And he says, I've got a friend who runs a cabaret show where he was the choreographer. And he put me in touch. So I went and met the guy who ran the show. And he was a really nice guy. We got on really well. He ran this cabaret show, which I ended up joining. And I worked with them for about 6 years, 7 years I was with them. And they did 3 or 4 shows a week. It was a dinner cabaret show, French Parisian style at the time. And there was 1 or 2 other magicians, some dancing girls, it was a mixed bag. It was a great show to be a part of, and it evolved over the years. And that's also how I went on to meet a guy called Jackson Aces, who's just done or about to do a sold out show at the Sydney Opera House. And he has, I think, he might be at 7 million followers now on TikTok.
Wow.
And yeah, a lovely guy, genuinely a good friend. I can't wait to see him. I'm heading back to Australia soon. Look forward to seeing him.
Before I ask other questions, because I just popped in my head, have you watched Prestige?
I have watched The Prestige.
What are your thoughts about it?
It's a great movie, and it's a very accurate representation of magic. I don't know anyone who's kept a secret twin their entire life. That's real dedication. But the breakdown, I think Michael Caine's the one who does the little monologue talking about the magic trick and how it's all very good, making the dove disappear. It's only magic once the dove comes back. Yeah. That's The Prestige. I'd never heard of that word, The Prestige, until the movie, but it was very accurate to how you do a magic trick, because you have to have a what would you call it, a good conclusion to what you're doing. You've got to wrap it up nicely. You can't just go, you can go like, here's your card, but it helps when you've got a bit more theatre to it.
So, the Magic Circle, the Ministry of Magic.
Yes.
Can you explain what it is and how you get into it, and what do these people do? What kind of benefits do you get from it?
Sure. So
is the magician's code, as they said in How I Met Your Mother, the magician's code, is it real?
In theory, yeah. I mean, okay, so I'll start at the beginning. So to join the Magic Circle, you have to be proposed by someone and then seconded by someone, and then there's an interview, and then there's a test.
And the ritual and
and a blood sacrifice.
Blood sacrifice, And
I met a guy out in Sydney who was long-time member, fully retired magician, but still a member. He proposed me, and then I found someone in the UK who could second me. Luckily, I'd known them both. You have to know them both for over a year. Then it was the interview where you just go in and you are interviewed. You have a chat with one of the members, and they try and get the lay of the land with the type of person you are and what kind of membership you would get, because there are people who become members who aren't performers, and I can't remember, I think it's like an associate member. Then there's full-on members, and once you become a full-on member, you open up the doors to other things. And then you come back again and you do a test, by which I mean you are put in the room and you have 10-15 minutes to show your tricks and to try and convince them, which is tough because you're performing to magicians. So they know your gag lines, they know the basic tricks. But the point is to kind of show that you're different and that you're not just doing tricks you've bought off the shelf, that you've actually put your own spin on them, you've created your own patter, you are an actual performer rather than just a hobbyist.
Yeah. And you did that.
I did do that.
And what does it give you?
So becoming a member means you can say you're a member of the Magic Circle, which is obviously, like as I mentioned before, it's not as potent a thing as it used to be. It's still relatively well known, particularly in certain circles. Most of the time when I used to mention I was in the Magic Circle, people would say, "Oh, so you're a lawyer too?" And I'd go, no. But
What? Lawyer?
well, there's a Magic Circle in law firms, which is known as like the key law firms in London, apparently.
All right.
This is something someone told me. You get a magazine and you can go to all of the meetings, which is every Monday, and they have magicians come in and give lectures. So you can attend all of those for free. I'd say for free, you remember. And there's a clubhouse you can go and spend time with. One of the best things about being a member is access to the magician's library, where I could be getting this wrong, but I'd never got to the bottom of it, where it's kind of assumed that if you're a member of the Magic Circle and you pass away, the Magic Circle gets first claim on a lot of your magic memorabilia. And that it may actually not be the case, but I know it's pretty standard practice that they get a lot of your books and stuff.
Yeah.
And so they have an incredible collection of classic magic books.
Wow.
Which is, I never actually got around to visiting it, but I kept telling myself I would.
Yeah.
And so then there's the clubhouse where you can go and hang out, and I think sometimes magicians will even rent it to perform their shows. It's quite an amazing theatre. And they have a museum with a bunch of, I think they've got like Tommy Cooper's original Fez, if you've ever seen him as a magician. And I think it's also, it's a great place to meet other magicians. Like I say, I went along, but I was usually squeezing it in between other things, so I wasn't able to kind of go along and hang out too much. And so I ended up kind of, not keeping my distance, I wasn't able to get as involved as I would have liked.
How competitive is the industry?
It varies. I think in Sydney it was a lot more competitive because there was fewer magicians fighting over more gigs. So when I came back to London, there were a lot more gigs, and there's still a lot more competition, but it's usually kind of, I'm not sure how to put it, but like there are rungs. Like I know there are magicians who charge significantly more, and they just wouldn't compete with each other. I recently put a posting up I'm a part of a group called Magic Gig Share, where a lot of magicians, a lot of whom are in the Magic Circle, will post work that they can't do, and they'll pass it along to each other and say, who wants it, see if they can help fill the work. Yeah. And I think I put that up 2 days ago, and I had probably 15 people get in touch to say I'll take the gig. It varies a lot. I think as well, what tends to happen with magicians is once you've kind of got in with an event organizer or a group of people who book you, they tend to only want you because they know what to expect, they know they can trust you. And I think it's like anything, is that they end up coming back to you. I've had several people who booked me over the years who would come back to me and I said, I can't make it. Do you want this person to fill in? And they said, if it's not you, we don't want anyone.
Yeah, and basically that's how I met you, because you were performing at the event at the company where I worked, and you performed for us like at least 2-3 times for sure.
I think 3 times over the years I did that for that.
And every time it was amazing. Every time it was something new, and I remember, and sometimes you see even the same tricks and like I still don't understand. I remember how I ended up with the foam dick in my hand the first time.
Yeah.
And then. Can you talk about the story with the Sony Xperia commercial?
Of course I can.
So, because as I know, you had some trouble with the circle, with the Magic Circle.
I did indeed. So Sony approached me and said, we're doing a commercial, we'd love you to be involved. We've got this new high-powered slow motion camera.
How did they find you?
Probably my website, I think. So they got in touch with me out of the blue saying, we're interested, we'd love to get you. We talked about details. One of the things they mentioned was basically they kind of wanted to catch me doing a trick, so they could use the tagline of quick enough, magic is faster than, hand is faster than the eye, but not faster than our camera.
Yeah.
And originally I was going to do a few tricks and they would catch me on one. And I was like, okay, I think I can get away with that. Then on the day of the event, they turned around and said, or day of the filming rather, they said, actually, we want to catch you on all of them. So, at this point, I think they'd paid us a deposit, we were there was a huge film crew, and I felt very under pressure to kind of commit to it.
Yeah.
There was also, a few days before the shoot, I'd asked to put in a caveat in the contract before I signed it about, I think, me being able to have a certain degree of say in what they could or couldn't use. Mm-hmm. And they said, yeah, absolutely not a problem. Just sign the contract, we'll add it in later.
Yeah.
Guess that Muggins over here. So,
you at that point, you would be happy if you would be a lawyer as well.
Yeah. So signed the contract, did the shoot, and it went well. It was a lovely, I think I got some great footage out of it. But yes, I did end up revealing a couple of effects because in the slow motion, you can kind of see what's going on. As a result, I didn't think much of it. The video went out. I was like, okay, at least they weren't major effects. They weren't big ones. They were little ones that you could find anyway with a YouTube search. So I sort of felt no harm, no foul.
But basically, like when you're watching the video in slow-mo, you can see how you actually perform the trick and what's the mechanics.
And so it wasn't until quite a while later when I suddenly get a message from a friend of mine saying, by the way, did you know this is like you're getting slagged off in the Magic Circle community? And I'm like, what do you mean? He says he sends me the link and I go to it and my video has been posted on the Magic Circle and the magicians were pissed.
Yeah.
There was a lot of how could he do this? What is he doing? I think there was a very funny comment where someone says, I wonder how much he got paid to do this. And someone said, well, clearly quite a lot. Look at the size of his belt buckle. Because even now, actually, I do. It's quite a large belt buckle. It's about this size with an ace of spades. Mm-hmm. I thought that was quite funny. I think some of the comments, there was one or two about either death or suicide being encouraged, which I thought was quite a strong take. Other magicians did come in and say, let's maybe tone it down a bit. Mm-hmm. That's a bit harsh. But it was quite clear that they were not appreciative of the fact that I was a member and doing this kind of thing.
But is there a rule that you can't reveal the secrets of the...
So one of the things of being a member is you do sign a thing that says you kind of agree to not reveal secrets. Mm-hmm. And there are a few other things of behavior, attitudes, and ways to treat both the community and magic as a whole.
Yeah.
And I'd overstepped the line. I was very much in the wrong here. I'd allowed myself to be led by the nose by Sony. And I received a letter and an email, and no owl, I'm afraid. But it did summon me to go and talk to the Council of Magicians and plead my case. And so I laid out the ground what happened, and they said, okay, appreciate your honesty because I didn't try and lie and hide it up. And they said, you have to understand that even if it's already out there, you're adding to the pile of the stuff that's out there that's being revealing. So you're not helping the situation. So... And, I apologized. I said, okay, well, we'll give you a 1-year suspension and then you can come back. But if you do it again, obviously you're gone.
Yeah.
And so that was it. And I met a separate time later, met a magician who became quite a good friend of mine who, when I was introduced him, I said, hi, I'm Max. He went, Max Rendall. I went, yes. And he goes, yes, of Sony Gate. So it was obviously a talking point at the Magic Circle for a little while.
But after you've been in the circle and after you got all the kind of, you met all the people and you have some kind of personal relationship with people and they know that you're not a dick. And even if they exclude you, is there anything that is on the downside for you? Do you get slugged off? You lose some jobs or whatever?
Not that I was aware of. I mean, you can't really know the jobs you didn't get because they never would have come across me. But as far as I'm aware, it didn't really impact my career very much.
It's not like some company books you and then they come back to you and oh, you broke the code. We can't hire you for this event.
No,
it will never happen.
I think I actually used it as leverage because the Sony came back to me and said, "Hey, just to let you know, we're going to use the footage for an event. So we're going to use it for more than we discussed originally." I said, "Oh, okay. Can I get paid again because you're using my footage again?" And they said, "Oh, I don't know." And I said, "I got kicked out of the Magic Circle for this." And they went, "Oh, okay, we'll pay you again."
Nice. That's nice. That's cool. I mean, usually they kind of, it's in a contract, the usage, like in how, in which media they can use, and if they reuse it, they usually have to.
I think again, they probably thought they could take me to the cleaners and not worry too much about paying me, given how much I bent over backwards last time. They were like, yeah, it's fine. We'll put it in the contract after you sign it. Because as we know, once a contract is signed, it's still very flexible.
Yeah. Did you ever have an agent, or you always worked alone?
I always worked alone. I had an agent when I was in Sydney, as I mentioned. That lady, she was my agent, and she would handle a lot of the gigs for me. But in the UK, no. There was a brief period where I created a fake agent who was just me with a slightly different voice and a new email, so that it would it seemed more impressive. Yeah. And then I found actually just having a relationship with the client worked really well in my favor, so I skipped that step in the end.
Do you have a style of magic? Are there styles of magic?
Yeah, I think so. The same way you might have a style of any kind of performer. So one of the things I was given, a book I came across when I was first getting into magic is a thing called Acting for Magician. And I can't remember the name of the magician who wrote it, but I'd highly recommend it to anyone who wants to, where he points out that as a magician, you are an actor playing the role of a magician, but you get to create the role, so you can design it how you want. And that's what I did. And one of the things he says is take a few characters that you like the look of, take elements from them and try and blend them. And what I ended up doing was kind of, my magician persona is myself, but maybe dialed up a little bit with a few other elements pulled in to try and create a character. And I usually consider it a combination between like Ryan Reynolds, the Doctor, and the Artful Dodger. Because those were characters I sort of felt I could resonate with and that would work really well for me. So I kind of try and channel that to a certain element.
The Doctor Who?
The Doctor Who, yes. Did I just say the Doctor?
Yeah.
The Doctor. Yeah, Doctor Who. And which of course is a huge sort of thing to pull from.
Yeah.
But I found doing that, it also really helps in terms of you have a character you're stepping into. And so it's easier to draw a line between when you're performing and when it's just you. And I think my wife especially is the one to often point out, she can tell when I've gone into performing mode because she notices a very obvious switch in the way I behave and talk and act. In terms of actual style though, I think yeah, but it's probably a little bit more, is the style. I don't know if there's style in terms of like specific genres. There are mediums of magic, which maybe is the wrong word, but there's like, you've got mentalists, and then you've got close-up magicians, but then close-up magicians can also be mentalists. You've got prestidigitators, which is a fancy way of saying they do sleight of hand. And then mentalism and sort of sleight of hand are probably the two big ones. But then you've also got stage magicians versus close-up magicians, and then in the middle you've got parlor magicians. And usually,
what's parlor?
So parlor would be neither close-up nor stage. It's kind of like a stage show, but to 20 people.
Okay.
Or a close-up show.
So just not people who are famous enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the thing of like a stage show is very much a stage show. You've got a theatre and seats, and you've got lighting and sound. Yeah. Parlor tends to be a bit more informal, where you set up a table and people gather around the table. And they all have their own different sort of styles. Usually, parlor in particular, obviously, both magicians can usually do it, but some magicians specialize in doing it because when you turn up to an event, if you're going to do close-up magic, like myself, my routine is probably about 20 minutes to half an hour-ish, depending on, like, maybe shorter, maybe longer, and I vary it, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to turn that into a 1-hour show. Whereas stage shows, like I say, that they go and they do their show and they're done. As a close-up magician, realistically, I probably spend 10, 15, 20 minutes with a group of people, move on and then do the same 10, 15, 20 minutes again and again and again. So there's Yeah, so you have that variety in terms of when you go to perform, how much practice am I getting in? Because for me, I actually practice by performing. Once I get a trick to a certain level and it's ready to show people, I don't really worry about rehearsing anymore, because you can't rehearse unless you have a live audience.
Yeah.
Whereas stage tends to be a lot more, not all the time, but it's usually down to the minute. There's timings, there's spots you have to stand, there's like usually a lot more thought can go into it, and you can really craft a very specific kind of experience. Again, with style, you've also then got the kind of magicians who might go the more serious route of like, I really can do magic, I really can do this, it's real. And other magicians who are like, magic is bullshit, let's have some fun. Which is the kind of vibe I try and go for. Like I say, that's where the Artful Dodger like, hey, like I don't know what's going on. And then you've also got, more slapstick, and you've got the more, more personal, where it's, you might try and draw like more emotional stories out of people, or craft a more coherent message maybe. So it's hard to nail down. I mean, you could say there are certain genres in terms of like, if you watch enough performance, you can see there are certainly huge differences, but me personally, would be hard pushed to put all of them into specific categories.
Yeah. All right. And mentalists, what are mentalists?
So that would have helped. So mentalism is very much mind reading.
Yeah.
And it varies. So there's mind, without sort of explaining too much how magic done, there's mentalism, which is like, I'm going to use props, and those props might be helping you do the mentalism. Or there's the stuff that mentalists do, which is really very aggressive, they have a really good understanding of psychology and how they can use that to their advantages. That reminds me, you also then have hypnotists, who is obviously, they kind of seem to get lumped in with magicians, particularly because it's sort of like almost like an offshoot of mentalism. But it's not necessarily magic per se, but it's kind of the same category of entertainer.
So you specialize on close-up magic, but do you kind of have some bits and pieces from different ones, or it's just mostly like...
So my stuff has always been leaning to close-up magic. I like walking around. I like being able to speak and interact with my audience, and I feel like you can create a lot more unique experiences by chatting to people, and kind of, you can tailor each performance then and there to that person. Whereas with stage, it's a little bit more rigid about exactly how it's going to go. With me, I still have a very card-focused performance, and I find cards fascinating. There's some really cool facts that I think they're cool. With a deck of cards, so you've got 52 cards in a deck. There's 52 weeks in a year. There's 4 suits. There's 4 seasons. There's 13 cards in each suit. There's 13 lunar cycles in a year. Most people don't know that one.
No, I had no idea.
If you add up the value of every single playing card, you actually get 365 if you include the Joker.
Yeah.
And there's some other ones.
Which is days in a year, number of days in a year.
Just in case.
Just so you follow the thought.
And then there's also things, so like the way cards evolve, the 4 kings represent 4 famous kings throughout history. So there's Charles de Gaulle, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and can't for the life of me remember the 4th one, but look into that in your own time, do some research. There's also you can't see it on all decks of cards, but if you have any familiarity with deck of cards, you know how there's a king who looks like he's stabbing himself?
I think so, yes.
Yeah,
I think
there's one king in particular, everyone's always like, he looks like he's stabbing himself, everyone else just holds their sword. It's not always the case, but on a lot of classical decks, if you look at the sleeve that's holding the sword, it's not the sleeve that matches the king's other arm you can see in the photo, because that's Julius Caesar, and it actually matches one of the jacks, who's meant to be Brutus.
That's so amazing. I had no idea.
Yeah, so that's not always the case, but I have come across that a few times. It's just one of those cool things which makes me go, I like that.
I mean, I don't think it helps you to do the magic in any way, apart from just being excited about it, right?
Yeah. Well, it's and again, I'm not going to get this right, but so if you take a deck of cards and shuffle them, the odds are it has never been in that specific order ever before. With a deck of cards, the way probability works, without getting too nerdy, because of how it works, the odds of a deck of cards being in any particular order is what's called 52 factorial, which is 52 and then an exclamation after it, which is 52 times 51 times 50. And without going into probability, that's how you work out the number. Mm-hmm. That number is so big that there's actually a video, I think Vsauce or someone else does a phenomenal video explaining just how unbelievably big that number is. Mm-hmm. And it's something like, if you were to take, if you were to, I'm not going to get it right, so I'm not going to try and get it right. But it's a whole thing about how, like, if you take, if you wait, if you count a certain number to a certain number and take a single step every time you reach that number, and you keep going, and then once you've got around the world once, you take a single drop out of the Atlantic Ocean and start the process again. And then you do that until the Atlantic Ocean is empty, and then you lay down a single piece of paper, fill up the ocean and start again. And again, taking one step, and then once you go the whole way around, take a drop out. Keep going until the ocean is empty. And if you keep doing that and only laying a piece of paper once the ocean is empty and restart, once that stack of paper reaches the moon, you're still not even a quarter of the way to the number that is 52 factorial.
My God.
Like I said, I'm not doing the explanation justice. You have someone else do it, but it's an unfathomably huge number.
Yeah.
And so there's something about like a deck of cards capturing infinity, and yet it's this tiny little thing that fits in your pocket.
That's insane. So every time when they hold a deck of cards that was shuffled, it's the exclusive deck of cards that only you own at this particular moment.
Yes. The odds of someone else having had that exact order of deck of cards is so small. It's not going to happen.
It's phenomenal. All right. So the tricks that you do, how many of them are yours?
So with Magic, obviously there is an element that you can buy a trick off a shelf and perform it, and it will go great most of the time if you have any idea of what you're doing. Yeah. What tends to happen for most magicians, particularly myself, is you buy a trick off the shelf and you learn it and you perform it, and then you go, oh, okay, I want to tweak this and tweak that. I want to change the order here. And so it morphs into your own trick over a period of time. It's like doing a cover song, and after a while, it almost stops being a cover song because it's become so unique to you.
Yeah.
And so I do have tricks that I've created from start to finish, and they're mine. But a lot of what I do is kind of a hodgepodge of what other people have done that I've put together and gone, oh, I really like his way of doing this, so I'm going to steal that. Mm-hmm. I like what he did over there, I'm going to take that, and I'm going to put it together and create this Frankenstein trick that's mine. Mm. So in essence, yes, they're mine, but they're also not. Mm. Some tricks are 100% stolen. So, and by that I mean, for example, the one your favorite with the foam penis, that is a very much off-the-shelf trick. Anyone can buy that, learn it, and do it. The difference is I tweak it a little bit to who I'm performing to. There are certain lines I will use or won't use according to who I'm performing to. But for the most part, that is a very standard trick. But there's not something to be said about you as a performer and how you come through the way you perform it. There's one trick in particular that I know has blown your mind several times, where the cards change in your hands.
Into a plastic
block.
Yeah.
And I remember performing that once, and I happened to have a magician friend of mine there who saw me perform it and said, after the trick was over, he looked and said, "You are one arrogant motherfucker." And I went, "What do you mean?" He says, "I can't believe you get away with that." Because, and again, I'm not going to tell you how it's done.
No, please don't.
But he was so amazed that I, first of all, had the gall to do it the way that I do it. And then second of all, that no one caught me in the process. And I still do it this particular way, and I still get away with it. And unless I'm very drunk, in which case my wife gets really annoyed because that's how she learnt how I did it. Because I was a bit pissed and didn't do it to standard. And she gave me a bolking going I love that trick. And now I know how it's done, you asshole.
I do love that trick. It's amazing. So how do you design a magic trick? Is there a process? Without going into details, we don't want to ruin the magic, but are there things that you have to think about?
Yeah, because you've got to, again, this is why I think it's often the best to start with someone else's trick. It's great if you can create your own, but that tends to come further down the line. It took me a while before I could do it, and I almost did it unintentionally. Because if you start with someone else's framework, it gives you the main thing that you need, which is an ending. And often a lot of magicians I know will start with the ending in mind and work backwards from there and figure out how can I create a story that means getting there is impressive. There are 7 types of magic, and I can't remember the names of them. So there's transposition, where 2 things switch places. Teleportation, where something ends up somewhere else. Penetration, where something ends up inside something else.
I know about that magic.
And there's levitation, where things levitate. I think, and like I said, I can't remember all of them. And often if you start with that idea of like, okay, I want to switch 2 objects, or I want to make an object appear inside something else. What is the object you want to put inside something else? What is the other thing you want to put it inside?
Stick your straight face.
I figured it was a good one to start with.
Yeah.
And then you can start thinking, okay, how would I achieve this? What do I have to do to make it seem like it's actually happened? How am I going to make it happen? And I think, again, it's why I say it's really good often to start with someone else's trick, is because then you can really break it down into the fundamental stages. You can strip away all of the set dressing and go, okay, here's what they've done. Right, how would I like to do that? And you don't even necessarily need to like take their trick and turn it into your thing, but you can use it of like, oh, okay, I can see what they've done. How would my character do it? How would me as a performer do that? So that you can end up with something. Because it's also very important that you have some kind of idea of who you are as a performer when you're designing tricks. For example, for me, my character to do mentalism would not fit. I don't take myself seriously enough. It doesn't fit the way I perform. And so for me to suddenly go, I'm going to read your mind, wouldn't fit. So I'd have to do I'd either have to dress it up in a way that did suit my character, or have to do something else entirely. Because it was funny enough, actually, there is a trick I perform in my act, which is a mentalism effect in essence, but I don't dress it up that way. I dress it up as I'm going to read your poker face to try and figure out your card. And then when that doesn't work, I use, I say magic, but it's not how I blame it. I kind of just go, oh, okay. And it's sort of like off the cuff. Somehow it just works. And it doesn't make any sense. And it really annoys people. And I love it.
All right. And you work with people all the time, right? So I'm guessing you should have a skill to recognize just, I don't know, different characters. Does psychology actually plays a role in your performance? Yeah,
it does. I think there's a certain element of, so when I started off studying engineering and commerce at university, I actually ended up switching to philosophy, or majoring in philosophy, and one of my sub-majors, I don't know if that's really what they call it, one of the other subjects, was psychology, which I found fascinating. How much that may have influenced me, I don't know. I like to think it did. I think there's an element of, I don't know if I could write down of like, oh, the reason I do this is because of this particular psychological principle. No, I think there's a lot more of, I like to think is you can read people. You start to recognize patterns in behavior, and you can see how people. You can see that, sometimes you get a very quick read on someone. You go, you're going to behave like this. And you might not know what they're going to say, but you can get a pretty good idea of like their vibe, how it's going to feel when they're challenging you, or the questions they're going to ask you, or the way they're going to question you. And it can really help if you can spot that stuff quickly. If you can spot who's going to be the difficult person, then you can get them on side, they'll be your biggest supporter. If you can find the person who's a great supporter already, you can use them to help bring in the other people. And I think there's that element of, particularly if you can spot who's losing interest and pull them back in. And so there's more, I think, less, maybe not psychology, but certainly reading your audience and understanding, hopefully, where they're coming from. I mean, there have been times I walked up to a table, I think was it last year? Before I'd even opened my mouth, the first thing anyone said looked at me and went, oh, I fucking hate magic. I was like,
what to hear?
What? I haven't even done anything yet.
Yes.
He actually, by the end, he was like, yeah, you're pretty good, which is always great.
Still hate you, but
yeah. So that's not uncommon. I've heard a variety of things like that. And again, if you can face that challenge head on and kind of bring them in, so often they'll join in on the fun and they'll get past it. One of my favorite lines to use is something that happens like all the time. You're in the performance and someone goes, oh, it's in your pocket, or you use this or that to like peek the card or steal the card. And whether they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. You just say, well, yeah, for you it was an education, for everyone else it was entertainment. That often kind of makes them go, you know, that sort of like, okay, I got him, I win.
Yeah.
I've beaten the magician, and now I can relax and enjoy the show.
Yeah.
If you're doing the you versus them, it's gonna be an uphill battle. It's gonna be a struggle. You're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're much better off going, yeah, great, you win. Let's go and enjoy ourselves.
Yeah.
Because the other thing I often say is, and you know, this will probably hurt your feelings, is someone will say something yada yada yada, or they'll go, oh, I saw that, and you go, yeah, magic's not real. Again, it's the sort of thing of like, you know, and I always point out to people, if magic was real in the way that people think is, you know, when most people say, is magic real? Yeah. They're asking, can I bend the laws of physics? No, I can just make you think I can. Yeah. I can make you feel something absolutely amazing if you'll let me. And also, because if magic was real, I'd sit at home and I'd go, £50 note, £50 note, £50. I would be
I don't need to do magic anymore.
I'd be rich beyond dreams. No, I'm not.
No, I mean, but look, like most people want to be lied to in terms of like, I'm an actor. If everyone would come to me and say like, after like performance in theater to tell me like, I know you're not that person, you're an actor, but I'm like, yeah, I know, thank you for telling me, but yes. Same here, because people just want to be amazed.
I think they do, and then yeah, there's a certain element I know a big battle magicians face. My mentor gave me the piece of advice: when you go up to a group of people, you're not going up against other magicians. You're going up against every shit magician they've ever seen, and unfortunately, there's a lot of them out there.
Okay.
Well, because as I think Teller of Penn and Teller said it, the problem with magic is it's one of the only art forms where you can go into a magic shop, buy a magic trick, walk out and perform it 5 minutes later and get probably an okay reaction. Mm-hmm. And so what tends to happen is, and I know this all the time, like I say, when people go, oh, I fucking hate magic. No, you don't. You hate shit magic. Mm. Well, some people probably do hate magic. Most people don't. They hate that awful magic where someone goes, I'm going to put out a row of 7 cards or like 21 cards, and then you're going to say, which row is your card in? And you're like, it's in the middle. And it doesn't make any sense. It's not fun. That shouldn't be you know, great if you're getting into magic, fantastic, do that. But yeah, that's the problem with a lot of magic, can be boring. But that comes down not to the magic, it comes down to the performer. And that's often why, again, it's that thing of your character is so important. Because I've seen crap magicians do what is essentially a phenomenal trick and get fuck all reaction. And I've seen a very, very talented magician do what is a really crap trick and blow people's minds away. I even see it from time to time where I'll be performing at an event, and once I've done a couple of tricks and I'm getting great reactions, and then I'll perform an effect, you know, for someone else who joins the group late that I consider not subpar, but certainly not one of my creme de la creme effects. Mm-hmm. So, and then I'll perform it and someone will lose their mind. And I'm going, really? Because I did the really amazing one 5 minutes ago and you didn't care. But this one, this is the one that gets you work. Okay. Fine. You know, you can't, there's a whole thing of like that you can't control, but it's how people can see you and how they perceive you. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing you can control. Outside of the effect itself, it's what can you do to help dress it up and make it entertaining.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you perform. I always was amazed, and I told you many times, because I was a bit tipsy probably as well. Do you remember like the worst performance you had? Not like in terms of like you couldn't do the magic for some reason, but like just like people.
So this particular event that comes to mind was performing at what's called an RSL in Sydney, and actually it was outside of Sydney, so it was sort of slightly in the sticks. And an RSL is sort of like, it's very army tied in, you know, they do minute silence, I think, every day at some point, which is, you know, great, power to them. But it's certainly nothing like a British pub, you know. It's not that sort of slightly warm, inviting environment. And Australians, when it comes to magic, are particularly difficult, which is something I didn't realise till I started doing magic back in the UK. So
you went through the proper school, and here it's easy.
I mean, sometimes, yeah. So this particular event, like I said, it was my first ever stage show, and I get there. There isn't a stage, it's just a room. And they're all sitting at their various tables drinking. And they've booked me for this sort of thing. It's in the middle of the day. And the microphone they gave me didn't quite fit my microphone holder. It wasn't ideal, it was a bit dodgy. And I went through my effects, my tricks, and the audience gave me nothing. Like I got one impressive bit where I do a thing where you make a cloth disappear and turn it into an egg. And then you show them like, oh, it's a fake egg, and you pull the cloth out. And it's like, ah. You say, look, I'm going to teach you how it's done now. And you do it again, but then this time you peel off a sticker where you push the cloth and crack the egg, and the yolk comes out. And I got a fuck off from the back of the room at that point. That was the only reaction I got. The rest of the time, it was like I was just hot and sweaty and uncomfortable, and they weren't enjoying the show. I wasn't enjoying the performance, and it was just outright painful as an event.
Did it discourage you?
It didn't discourage me because I think I went back to my team, this cabaret I was working at the time, and told them about it, and they all reassured me that it happens. You know, not every gig is going to be a knockout in the park. They're not all going to be absolute winners. You know, sometimes they're just a bit crap. It is what it is. You take what you can, you learn, you move on. And I think having that support network was crucial at the time, because it could have been a lot more impactful. It could have left me a lot more downtrodden, and it didn't.
And I read somewhere that one of the most memorable performances for you was Special Olympics teams during the 2000 Sydney Olympics.
Yeah, that was a really cool performance to do, because it was kind of a huge, one of the first like big scale events, and also I think just the Olympics was like, oh, the Olympics, I'm making it in the world, I'm doing really well.
Yeah.
And so it was quite exciting on that front, and the people who I performed to were lovely. And I remember, funnily enough, there was a table I performed to which had quite a lot of, I say children, they weren't really children. They were people who had Down syndrome of varying degrees. And their reactions were so, I think as a magician, they loved it so much more. And there was this breath of fresh air of, they weren't trying to get one over on me. They fully bought in. And they were such a dream to perform to. They were so lovely. And I mean, that particular thing always stuck with me, the performing to that particular table. And I think there was also a minute they were so appreciative, because I think they felt kind of sidelined, slightly ignored by other people, because obviously it's a big chaotic event and it may be not their speed. And it was just, for me, it was very special to be involved with that. And then they actually got in touch afterwards to thank me for what I'd done. And again, it was just this thing of like, it was so nice to get that kind of feedback, which you don't normally get from people.
Yeah. How long have you been doing magic?
It'll be about 14 years now.
And in 14 years, according to the internet, you performed for celebrities and for a royal family, and I think for Henry Cavill.
So this is a classic example of fudging your...
marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, fudging one's CV a little. So performing to Henry Cavill was at a house party I happened to also be at, so I wasn't booked to perform to him. I performed to him, he loved it, apparently it blew his mind. I forced my business card on him, never heard from him.
How is he in person? Because he seems like such a lovely dude.
He was, I think this was slightly before he'd taken over, it was like just after the first Superman, which I think was when he really started becoming known. And he was lovely. I mean, it was one of those things, someone said, is Henry Cavill here at the party? Like someone whispered to me, is he here? And I was like, oh yeah, I think so. Because in my head I was like, I don't know, like Steve's also here. I have no idea who Henry Cavill is. I played beer pong against him, and I think I might have beaten him because his friend wasn't as good as him. And it was one of those things of, I'd love to have spent more time with him. And especially now looking back, but at the time he was really just another guy at the party, and I'm sure some people held him a certain degree of awe, and unfortunately, I think I realized too late like who he was.
Yeah.
But we got on very well, and yeah.
And then you performed for royal family as well.
That I have done a few times. So there was the big one is that I often brag about, because it's the one to brag about, is Princess Eugenie's engagement party. And I always wonder, because technically I signed an NDA. I'm pretty sure I can talk about it after the fact.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends.
As you know, I'm really good with contracts.
We'll add it after the... I'll cut it out. Don't worry.
And that was a really incredible event to be a part of. There was actually me and 2 other magicians. It was properly like you had to sign in with security, and then we got to go around the tables and perform to them. And that was a hell of a performance to be a part of. Very, very elegant affair, to say the least. And I mean, incredible.
I'm guessing there are like other kind of different requirements in comparison to like some corporate gig. Is there, like, do you behave differently in general with is different crowd?
I mean, it's one of those things I try and tailor the nature of my performance to the crowd. For example, I think the best example is the foam penis. It's an absolute winner of an effect, and it's one of those. A lot of magicians give me stick because they think it's a cheap laugh, and I'm like, yeah, but it's still a laugh.
Yeah.
And people do like it. People think it's hilarious because people don't see the punchline coming. I'll have that on me. But at corporate events and at that kind of event, I will check the crowd to see if it's going to land well, because if you bomb at that kind of event, that's really not going to do you any favors. And there are little ways you can check with so the lead up for your audience. The lead up to the effect with the sponge balls the foam penis involves the sponge balls, which are the little red foam balls, and they're great fun. And there's a lot of like them appearing, disappearing, that kind of stuff. But what I'll do is there's a bit when I'm holding 2 of them and I'll say, here, can you hold on to both my balls for me? Mm-hmm. And usually based on their reaction, you can assess like, okay, which way is this going to go? Are they going to find that funny? If you're not quite sure which way it's going to go, you can then go a little bit further. So they might say something like, oh, these are your balls. And you go like, well, no, mine are blue. And again, you can see like, did they laugh at that? If they did, okay, maybe you can go a bit further with it. If they didn't, don't end with the foam penis because Granny's going to have a heart attack. You can test the waters. Yeah. Then I'll probably be a little bit more. So with certain events, I'll change the wording of the effects. Yeah. If I think it's the right audience, I'll do that thing where I'll kind of act like I'm more bored by magic than they are. So there's a bit when something appears and I go, woo, magic. And act like I'm really disappointed in myself for having to do this for a living. And
I'm just imagining you doing it, and it's already like I just imagine I'm entertained.
So there's things like that you can do to tailor it to the audience you're performing it to. But again, that's why I like close-up magic, because I can make things up on the fly. I can change the order of the effects I'm performing. I can take a line out if I don't think it's going to land with the crowd. I can add one in if I come up with it on the spot and I think it'll go really well. If I can reference a trick we just did and Stacey happened to drop the cards everywhere, I can give Stacey a nudge and I can make fun of her, affectionately, of course, and within the confines of our performance, so that again it feels like we're creating a narrative together, rather than me turning up and going, I'm going to do this, that's it, this is how it's going to go, and being really stuck in that sort of structure.
Yeah. And so in general, how was the event for the royal members of the royal family?
There was nerve-wracking. I feel like I didn't do a good enough job because I'm very hard on myself. Okay. And
as any performer, I guess.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think it's that thing of like, if you're not nervous for an event, it's because you don't care.
Yeah.
And I was also there with my mentor, Faye Presto. And I say mentor, it's a very informal mentorship, because she was very good friends with my dad from long time ago. And she happened to be there. There was another magician as well. And every time I'm around Faye, I feel like I should just give up magic and I'm wasting my time, because she's so good. At least to me anyway. I see her perform and I just get depressed.
So when you're watching other magicians work, and I'm guessing there are levels of magicians, and there are levels of magicians that are better than you, which for me I don't understand how it's possible. But it's like when you watch them perform the trick, how often do you know how it's done?
It varies a lot. So I think the best example I can think of is Darren Brown. is, if you've ever heard of him, he's a phenomenal sort of mentalist, psychologist, and he does delve really deep into the psychology stuff. And he is very much a mentalist. He does do some magic tricks, but usually under the guise or the story of being a mentalist, you know. And he's very honest. I love what he does as well, because he'll always say, magic's not real, this is all a lie, I'm going to lie to you, but you're still going to do what I want, and I'm going to prove to you like how crazy things are. And you know, he predicted lottery numbers. He's got I think he got Stephen Fry to shoot someone. No, I think he got someone to shoot Stephen Fry as to assassinate them. He got some people to rob an armored truck. You know, all of this kind of crazy stuff. I was watching his stage show. I can't remember the name of it. It's out there. It's a phenomenal stage show. I watched it and I knew how he did every single trick he did. And yet every 5 minutes I kept going, oh, you fucking genius, I hate you so much. Because the way he constructed them, the order he constructed them in, the way he did his storytelling was infuriating, because it made so much sense. It was so good. And I was like, it just really brought something out in me. And like I said, because I knew how he was doing it and I fucking loved it.
Yeah.
And with Faye, she's been kind enough to teach me all of her tricks, because you know, she's walked me through them afterwards and said, this is how I do it, this is why I do it this way. And I watch her do it, and she's so natural at it that, you know, she'll be the first to admit her sleight of hand is appalling. You know, she's 70 something now, and she can still get away with some incredible sleight of hand stuff. But she's been doing these routines for 20, 30, 40 years, and she has them down to a T. Her misdirections, the way she leads an audience, the way she talks to her audience, to her it's second nature. And I watch it and I know exactly how it's all happening, and I don't care. It's just it's art form at its purest level to watch her do it. And it's similarly, when I was out in Sydney, I worked with these other magicians, so Jackson Aces and James Karp were the two other magicians I worked with most regularly. There were a few others, but these are the guys who were in the cabaret with me. I obviously knew how they did all their effects, because I usually helped them set it up or build it, or you know, we would workshop them together to get them to the level we wanted them to be. And I would know how they were done. Maybe it's something about me, I'd still laugh at their jokes. I'd still be kind of like, yeah, absolutely nailing that. You know, I'd get really invested and I'd still enjoy it. I think it's like when anyone's really good at something, you can enjoy it regardless. And I think, funny enough, it's also the thing of when someone goes, you know, like, oh, you know, magic's not real, you just put it in your pocket. No one's really that surprised, but just because you know how a guitarist plays the guitar does not detract from how amazing his guitar playing is. And particularly with people at the top of their game, yeah, you're like, yeah, sure, I know how he's doing it, but like, look at him doing it. And you know, particularly with Faye's case, like what she does is just, it's elegance, I think is the best way to put it.
And were there ever tricks that you had no idea how it's done? When you're watching it, you're just like, I can't figure it out. Or usually you kind of like, I know at least the principle.
I think it was one of those things of I knew enough that I'd either know how it was done. There were certainly one or two I didn't know how they were done. There's I think there's a rope effect that she taught me how to do, and I had no idea how to do rope routines, which is when you cut the rope in half and then join it back together and all this kind of stuff. And she taught me her routine, and I was like, oh, that's how it's done. Because I had no idea, but I was still like, I kind of know what you're doing, but not exactly how it's going together. And then there's certainly one or two, but never had any idea how it was done. For example, she does an incredible bottle through table, where she'll take a bottle of champagne or wine off the table, wrap it in a napkin or something, you know, tap it on the table.
It's always wrapped in a napkin.
It is always wrapped in a napkin. With her version, you can see the top of the bottle poking out the top. It's not completely covered, so it's not the shell.
Yeah.
And she'll show it to you, and then she pushes it through, and you can see the top of the bottle the whole time, and top of the bottle only disappears right at the end. Then, and again, like just learning how she did it and why she does everything the way she does it. And then there are a few others where, again, she really perfected the best way of getting it done. And so there were some I didn't know how it was done. She gave a lecture tour and she wrote her notes up and she sold them to people to buy. And she gave me a copy when she came around for dinner one night to see my dad. And we all had a lovely dinner with her, very, very special memory. And I was lucky enough to look through it, because I have it upstairs somewhere, and she does a brilliant job of explaining it. And yeah, it's a very good example as well of how some magicians will spend ages refining a very, very specific skill, and it's not always worth it. Whereas, for example, I know magicians who, I'm sure you've seen it, where they'll show their hand like this, and they go bang, and a card appears. And they do it again, and another card appears. And I know magicians who can do that with an entire deck of cards without ever taking their hand away from here. They'll show you the back of the hand, but you'll never see it. The cards keep coming. It's incredible. It takes years to learn, and it's a kind of maybe a 30, 40-second trick. It's a lot of work for not enough payback. Whereas a lot of the effects I've learned, I'm more interested in what's the reaction I'm going to get. How is it going to affect the audience? And that is far more important to me. And I think a lot of other magicians I've worked with, because that's what it matters at the end of the day, is how do people perceive your trick? How do people feel? What do they see? Yeah. And they don't care how long you spent learning it.
Absolutely. No one thinks about it, because I understand what you mean, because with the whole deck appearing like here, it's like I've still seen one or two. I don't care about the rest, and it's like still a lot of skill to actually keep them coming, right? And the effect just goes down. Yeah,
I mean, obviously it's done in a way of, they go blank 1 card, 2 cards, and then they'll go like, and they'll produce like a fan of cards. Drop them. And it's beautiful. It is a beautiful piece of magic. But to me, it's kind of like, congratulations. Like, now what?
Does technology play a huge role? So, for example, like modern magic, is it more tech than it was, for example, like 50 years ago, 60 years ago?
Oh, absolutely.
20 years ago, 10 years ago.
5 years ago. I think there are certainly some magicians who've really lent into it. So there are magicians whose entire act is tech-based. And it's incredible. There's a guy who does phenomenal stuff with an iPad, where he pours liquid out of the iPad, and then he'll like make an apple appear from the iPad, and he'll, producing things, putting them into the iPad. Yeah. And I know magicians who do them with phones. So there's a very popular one going around at the moment where you get your phone out, they get their phone out, and you put a bunch of 8s on your calculator, and you put 2 8s on theirs, and then you can take one of the 8s off your calculator and drop it into theirs, and you can see yours disappear and theirs appear. Yeah. And there's things like that. I think, so what you have is, obviously, I don't do anything with tech. The only tech trick I ever used was to get phone numbers, where I'd say, what's your phone number to the girl? I'd send her a text with my prediction, under the premise of being like, that way I can't change my mind. And also now I have your phone number. Yeah. I know lots of other magicians who do loads of stuff, whether it's, like I say, with pulling stuff out of a phone or something.
But even if we're not talking about like just the phones and stuff, but just like technology, because I mean, there are things, like I know that you have a trick. I don't remember like exactly how it goes, but in general, like this is you need to remember your card, and then you have a light, and then you just like do this, and you open your fingers, and here we can see the actual number, or like the actual card.
Yeah, I've got a blister in the shape of the card and the suit, the number of the suit. So, I suppose then in that sense, technology is improving, so you can craft tricks you couldn't have made before. There's certainly tricks that you can make now that you couldn't make before, because we have the capability and the ways of doing it. And I've seen magicians build stuff that you couldn't have made 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. And there's certainly with 3D printing, some people can make stuff at home that they couldn't make otherwise. So I think technology does play a big part in it. But also, it doesn't have to, because sometimes there's a reason why the old tricks are still around, because they rely on the tricks of the human brain rather than necessarily clever gimmicks. Yeah. And I think that will always be more impactful, because I know magicians who work with gimmicks and do incredible illusions and effects and tricks and all the rest of it. And gimmicks is when you take something and you make it not what it is. So, you might gimmick a card by turning it into a trick card, so something that's different about the card to kind of help you do an effect. And you can do some incredible stuff with that kind of thing. And some magicians rely exclusively on that. And maybe rely is the wrong word, but that's the way they've gone because you can do some incredible things. But again, you're still requiring very specific props to do very specific things. Whereas being free from that, those constraints where it's like, I pride myself on the fact I can take a deck of cards from anywhere and do a whole bunch of stuff with it. And I don't need a specific deck of cards, or I don't need to go and prep stuff beforehand. But that's not to say that's necessarily any better or worse, it's just the way I've gone. And so I think technology, it's very much a part of it, and it's be foolish to not try and include it and use it when you can.
So with sleight of hand, do you exercise? Do you have like some kind of like exercises for like, I don't know, for your fingers, how to kind of move, and like how long do you have to practice to start doing something?
So yes, when you're starting out, you have to practice a lot because you have to, so there are no muscles in your hand. It's all tendons. All the muscles.
Just mine or everyone's?
all the muscles are in your forearms, and they pull your tendons.
No, but this is a muscle. No, I think. Well,
maybe not. I remember it was a QI thing. They said there's no muscles. Yeah. But there is an element of you have to practice certain things. So.
Oh, we're getting into this one.
So one of the things I used
to... just a quick note. So basically, if you're listening to this podcast, and now Max will do some stuff with cards, so maybe if you have a chance, and if you're interested in it, then maybe find it on YouTube or on Spotify, the video version, because there will be some tricks in this episode.
When you're learning sleight of hand, you're spending time on the art of concealing what you're doing so that no one can see that you're doing it. Which means you have to do things in what is essentially quite an uncomfortable way.
Yeah.
And you have to train your hands how to do that. When I teach magic, I always try and tell my students that when you're starting out, it's like riding a bicycle with when you're first learning. Every part of your brain has to be 100% focused on riding the bike. After a while, like now, I do not think about how do I ride a bike. I just go and ride the bike. Similarly, with a lot of the stuff when I'm doing my tricks now, I don't think, do this, I just do it. And you remove that element of like, I have to think about how to do it. Then there's also the thing of, for example, doing this thing, which is called a card spring. That wasn't a particularly pretty one, but there we go.
Yeah.
That is exhausting when you do it a few times, particularly when you're learning, because your hand, you will feel the pain in your thumb, because your thumb's going like, what are you doing? Stop doing that, because it's a new exercise. So you have to train yourself to be able to do it. Similarly, when you're doing, like I say, sleights, so you're doing particular moves, your fingers rebel, for want of a better way. And then when you're doing this sort of stuff, this is called cardistry, these kind of like flourishes, moving the pack around. That kind of stuff. There's an element there of you do it until it becomes second nature, so you don't have to think about it. So I can look away and it should still go relatively well. And then there's also, it's like using any kind of tool or an instrument. It's something you just allow to become second nature.
Do you do some kind of warm up before you perform?
No. I mean, I'll do the sort of that. I might crack my knuckles and stuff. I mean, I'm not sure how much of a difference that really makes. But really, it's more of like I'll walk out onto the floor with everything ready, and I'll do a couple card springs, maybe what's called a card dribble, which is slightly different. And then I'm usually kind of ready to go because it doesn't take too much to warm my hands up. Though, when you asked before about exercises, the practicing the effect itself was a lot of the exercise. There was a period before where I tried doing guitar warm-up exercises. So one of the things I used to do is to sort of, you'd put your hand like this and then you'd try and bend each finger one by one. And then you do like, no, I can't really do it because it's been so long, so I don't do it anymore. You practice these sort of movements because it also helped you separate your fingers.
Yeah.
Because obviously one of the things that magicians do a lot of the time is, I mean, I'm not going to give too much away, is the little finger has to go and do something different. And what's really hard is to stop this finger following it and your other fingers following it, because normally your fingers all move as a thing. So you've got to try and separate them so they can start moving independently.
I know. I can't even do the spoke thing, like, oh wait, no, I can't. I can do this.
Yeah, live long and prosper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, that was always the exercise. Is that one as well? Then you've got to be able to go back and forth.
I'm damaged. All right, so that's like physical stuff, physical warm. But like, do you need to put yourself in a proper set of mind before because you need to interact with a lot of people? Like, do you need to kind of get into some proper state of mind to do that? Like, do you have any routine for that?
Not particularly. I'd usually find in the process of going from wherever it was I was doing, usually on the day of an event, I start preparing quite early on in terms of making sure, I run checks, make sure everything I've got everything I need. I've got backups, everything's packed and away. And because I always go to an event and get changed at the event, most of the time anyway, then what happens is I kind of run through my checks, okay, I've got everything. And then the whole way there, I'm usually kind of running through my head, like, okay, what to expect. And then I'll distract myself by doing other things like playing Nintendo Switch or something that I brought with me. And then usually as well, once I'm there and I'm kind of going through the process of putting on my outfit and putting the things in the pockets where they need to go, and again, double checking I've gotten everything and going, okay, I can do this effect, I can't do this one, okay, this is loaded, this is ready, great, I've got it all. And then I walk out, I'm pretty much ready to go. And the way I start all of my performances now is the first thing I do is I throw fire at the audience. So I throw a little fireball and I make a joke about, well, that was pointless, wasn't it? Usually gets people laughing because they're like, what? Hang on, I'm confused. And you go, yeah, it's just to get your attention. And then I just go into performing. Because it's not like, I try and reassure people, it's not everyone look at me, yes, I'm an entertainer, I'm here to entertain you. But at the same time, it's not about me forcing you to take part in something you don't want to. It's meant to be a slightly shared experience. And, if someone generally doesn't want me, then I'll walk away. Mm-hmm. And I find that usually by doing that, there's a sort of level of, I don't have to turn into something I'm not. I just kind of elevate what I already am. I have had experiences in the past where I've done an event that I shouldn't have done because I was way too hungover. And the client afterwards was sort of pointed out, she's just like, you weren't really on form today. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm really sorry. I was very, very hungover. Didn't get much sleep last night. He's like, you could have just told me you didn't want to come, or you didn't need it, because it was a repeat gig. I was doing it sort of every lunchtime. And yeah, it was sort of that thing of, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have. But yeah, so psyching up wise, I think I've got my steps in the nature of preparing and getting to the event. That's how I warm up.
What was the most memorable event, or maybe just single reaction that you ever had?
I think it depends how I look at it. I think one of my favorite stories that I always come back to is when I was at that restaurant before I was at the cabaret. So this is the first one. It's called Harrods in King's Cross in Sydney. I was performing, and obviously I was still quite green at the time. I think this might have been like gig 10 or something, very early days. I was doing a trick where I put the cards in my mouth and I try and find it by taste because they've signed the card. I fail to find it, and then I get them to hit me in the stomach, and then I vomit up their card. Not physically vomit, of course, but you get the idea. And the card came up, and I took the card out, I unfolded it, and they went, that's not my card. And I went, and I looked at the table, and the deck of cards was face up, and on the bottom of the deck, looking straight up, was their signed card. So I'd made a mistake somewhere. Their card was sitting there, and I went, what about that one? And they lost their mind because I was now like a good couple of feet away from the deck of cards, and it was on the other side of them who was watching me do this, and they were absolutely mind blown. And I remember thinking well, that was bloody lucky, but. For me, that always stuck with me as a very good example of when it comes to magic, to remember your audience don't know where you're going. Yeah. They don't know what the end of the trick is. So if you don't tell them it's the end, it's not the end. And so to me, that's always been one of my favorite stories just because of how it worked out.
That's fantastic. Look, 2 questions. Question number 1. I know that you're happily married and you have a kid, and I know your wife. Was it magic that helped you, or just you just got lucky?
So fun enough, the story goes, without going into too much detail and getting too soppy, when I first met my wife, we were at a house party. I think we chatted briefly. I turned to my friend at the time and I said, that's going to be my wife. And it was about 5 years later we finally got married. We actually started dating a little while after that, and then she broke up with me to get back with her ex.
No.
Whole thing. But, you know, it was...
And then you made him disappear.
Oh, he did that all on his own. No, so funny, it was a little bit later on in the night where, like, I'm not sure how much we'd spoken at this point. It was a little bit. I hadn't done much magic, but she was aware. I think she became aware that I did magic. Mm-hmm. And actually, no, I'm getting that wrong. The first thing she ever said to me, because she'd seen me do some magic for her friends, and she may have been in the group. Mm. The first thing she said to me after the tricks were over, she came up to me separately and sort of said, like, do you use magic to get laid?
That's basically what I'm asking you.
It was like, was this all just to get in my pants? I ended up pointing out that, like, yeah, obviously it helps, but it's not the sole reason I do it. It's, you know, I do love it and it is what I do for a living. Mm. And then we went on to talking, and I think it took a while to get convinced her that I did actually want to date her. Mm. But yes, that was...
So it does help.
It does help. I think for several reasons, though. It's partially because it's entertaining. People like to be entertained, and it makes you more appealing as a human being if you are entertaining. But I think the major thing is, and I know it for myself, is it made me a lot more confident in myself. Yeah. You know, doing the exercise I mentioned about how when I went out into the street to perform to strangers, that is such an emotionally tumultuous experience. Because the main thing I took away from that is that people's rejection of me had nothing to do with me. Mm-hmm. And that's, it seems so obvious once you know that, but to fundamentally know that in your person.
I don't think it's even knowing that is enough.
It's feeling it.
Feeling it.
Yeah. And realizing that you know, they can say whatever they want and it's not going to affect you. Mm. That allows you to carry yourself in a very different way. Then there's also there's the ability of being able to approach people you don't know. That's a huge thing of confidence that's required to be able to do that. And then it's the ability to perform, which requires a degree of charisma, practice, and again, self-confidence. And these skills kind of go into making you a far more appealing person, assuming you're good. I know plenty of magicians who will never get laid. Mm-hmm.
All right. And now a financial question. Like, so you were doing it for 14 years, you said. Mm-hmm. Can you live from doing magic? I mean, I understand that there are some magicians that are amazing and they have like millions of subscribers and everything, but like as an actor, I know that there is like 1%, maybe even less than 1% of actors who actually work all the time and can live from acting. And most of us are just trying to struggle and, you know, hustle, and then when we can, we perform. And we just do it because we love performing. Like, so for magicians, is it close or?
It varies quite a lot. Obviously, you do have the magicians who make enough and they support their families. A very good friend of mine, he has put 2 kids through private school, and he, without getting too close to any specifics, he doesn't necessarily charge too much more than me. Sometimes charges less than me, but he has a huge network. He's been. He's very ingrained in the entertainment area, and like lots of people know him, and he's their go-to guy. So,
how did it happen to him? Did he build his network, or he was already had it?
You'd have to ask him. Yeah. You have to get him on the next episode. I don't know specifically, but I came across him because when I came over from Australia, I discovered you can't take your reputation with you, and I had no connections. I didn't know anyone who could help me get any work as a magician. A few people, sure, but not enough to really make a living. And so I started calling event agencies and event organizers and being like, hey, I'm a magician, book me, I want to be in your events. And I think it was somewhere along the line where someone turned around and said, like, look, I'll be honest, I'm not going to call you. What you should do is talk to this guy, because if I need a magician, he's the guy I speak to every time. And that's how I met Zap. This is the guy's name. He's Zap. He's phenomenal. And yeah, like I say, he's been very successful with it. And a lot of the magicians I know tend to be doing something else on the side. But I do know quite a few magicians, particularly, I think a lot of the magicians I would rub shoulders with make a living exclusively from magic. Mm-hmm. The mistake often is not committing enough to it, because, I think it is tough, like any performance-based art form, you're always going to struggle to make a living. You're always going to struggle to a certain extent until you start to make a name for yourself and you start to have a full diary and you start to have the income. But I do know quite a few magicians whose exclusive form of income is magic. And it was mine for a long time. And I don't think I was particularly unique. I think I was good enough to get away with it because, and I say get away with it, maybe that's the wrong way of putting it. I think it really comes down to, can you put in the time and effort, and then can you do enough to distinguish yourself from every other magician so that people do kind of go, oh, he was unique, and well, maybe, I mean, that's not how people talk, but you know what I mean in terms of they remember you specifically rather than necessarily the magic you did.
Yeah.
And so again, I think like any performers, it's going to come down to you and your ability to commit to it to a certain degree. I think you probably do have an easier time than other art forms because it is quite a small community. I mean, the Magic Circle is only a few thousand members, and that's worldwide. And because the thing is, there might be lots of people who might consider themselves magicians, but professionals who are actually making money and making a living, there's just not that many out there. I mean, even if someone goes, oh, there's loads, I'm like, yeah, but it's probably only in the low hundreds, and there's many more events going on per year than there are magicians to perform.
So what would you say to people who consider this as a profession, like what they should do, like step by step, where to start and what to kind of, because you went through all of it, like I'm sure maybe there were some steps that you made like too early, or maybe you started with something like how to optimize their time, and what is the first thing they should do?
The first thing to do is to find the magic that you enjoy, because that's what got me hooked. It was finding a magic trick that just I had to learn how to do it, rather than feeling, oh, I'm going to learn magic to to make money. And I think that's like with any skill. If you're doing it exclusively to make money, you're never really going to get that pull to do it properly and to commit to it. Because when I was getting into magic, when I was getting into magic, there was someone I used to work with when I was still at the bar, and I was still a bartender. She mocked me because she happened to go past me on the bus, and she saw me at a bus stop playing with a deck of cards. And I'd get on the bus and I'd be playing with a deck of cards. I'd go home, I'd watch magic videos, and I'd play with a deck of, it really did kind of become all consuming.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to go to that level of commitment, but that was how I was able to go from knowing no magic to getting a paid job within 6 months. And then there's also the thing of realizing, I think there's also the element of learn the magic you want to learn, and then, I think there's the classic thing of fail fast, fail often, that sort of stuff. It's gonna take a little while to find your feet. I think there is a lot of free resources out there. If you go on YouTube now, I mean, there's hundreds of videos. All you have to do is find the person who's teaching the stuff that you like, play with it, get involved with it, and then again, I mean, I'll probably get in trouble for this. When I was starting out, Pirate Bay was still in a full swing, and I found a thing which was called 1,000 magic books and downloads. And I found thousands of magic books, and I was able to go through them, and it really helped me pick out stuff that I could do and couldn't do. The main thing it's going to come down to is practice, because when I was teaching magic, and I still do occasionally now, but the one thing that differentiates all of my good students from all of the other ones are the ones that practice. Because everyone wants to learn magic in theory, but it's who's actually going to put in the time to do it. Because there is that element of you have to learn some fundamentals. You have to overcome that barrier of you have to be good enough not to show what you're doing. Yeah. Because if someone catches a glimpse of it, they're not going to be as pulled in to the effect. They're not going to believe you've bent the rules of physics. There is an element where you have to lie to people, and you have to be able to juggle multiple things at once. Sometimes you have to actually juggle. But there, again, the analogy I mentioned is when it comes to, it's like riding a bicycle. When you're doing the physical side of the effect, that's what it should be like. You should just do it without having to think about it, because what you're going to be doing verbally is going to be doing something else entirely. And there's an interesting dilemma that sort of seems to happen internally where you're physically doing one thing, but saying you're doing another. And at first, your initial reaction is to not like doing that and to fight against it. And it can be hard to get past that. But if you spend the time practicing and it becomes second nature and fluid, and it becomes kind of this sort of like smooth performance and transition, and it's not this sort of jerky, jumpy, okay, what do I do now? Oh, I've got to do this. Oh, that's right, and then I do this. And it's got to become more natural and more, I mean, without just saying natural again and again, that's a really key element of it. Unless you, of course, you want to go down the route, because there's always one that breaks the rule, of being a purposefully quite jerky magician, and I'm sure there's a character in there somewhere. But for the most part, it's about the basics, and if you start with the basics, you can then build in who knows how many different directions. I was also very fortunate. I happened to meet the people I met in the order I met them, which really helped. But also I did find, because I wasn't ashamed of learning magic, even though there's a certain degree of stigma on it, I'd be at university and I was playing with a deck of cards in class, and I performed. I wasn't even performing. I was just playing with the cards. And someone approached me and said, like, "Oh, do you learn? You're doing stuff with a deck of cards." I'm like, "Yeah." And then she said, "Oh, I know about a group of magicians who meet once a week. Why don't you go and hang out with them?" And I was like, "Great, I will." And I did. And there were some great magicians there, including the guy who gave me a death threat. Yeah.
So basically, as with anything, you need to get excited about learning it, right? And then I'm guessing to stimulate your excitement of learning, because at some point just motivation goes down. You need to start performing it, like at least someone and see the reaction. It kind of probably will feed your enthusiasm, right?
Yeah, and there is certainly an element of picking the right audience to perform to, because friends and family will get you so far, and then because obviously they'll be very forgiving, they're on your side. But then you do need to perform to people who aren't your immediate friends and family, who will be a bit more brutal, who will put you under a microscope.
Yeah.
And I certainly remember when I was first learning the course I took, the advice they gave was, we're going to teach you 4 or 5 tricks. Do not show them to anyone for quite a long time.
Yeah.
You need to know them well enough before you show them to someone. Because, again, it's one of the things, if someone's playing the guitar and they play it badly, it's not going to prevent them from playing the same song again. If I'm going to show you a magic trick and I don't do a good job of doing it, but then I get good at doing it and show it to you, because you've seen me do it badly, I've already ruined this potentially good performance. And there's a big element of that. And so there is that thing of, you've got to find that balance between getting good enough at it and then showing it to people, which is why when I'm learning a new trick, I learn it and practice it and get really familiar with it until I feel comfortable to show it to someone, and then I'll probably show it to my wife. But after a while, I will only rehearse it by performing it. And again, there's also that thing of, once you have enough or a few like really powerful, good tricks that you can do, it gives you a bit of a safety net. And one of the best techniques someone taught me was, what you do is, if you've got 5 tricks you say that you know really well and they're your go-tos, next time you're performing to someone, open with one of your favorites, do the trick that you're working on, and then finish with one of your favorites. They'll forget the trick in the middle, whether it's a success or not. It's the beginning and the end they'll remember more so. And then what happens is you'll build up confidence with that trick until eventually it becomes one that you can do more with.
How often do you retire or add new tricks to your routine?
I cannot remember the last time I added a new trick to my routine. I have thousands of pounds worth of new tricks that I have purchased, much to my wife's annoyance, that sit upstairs, like opened, looked at, and put away again. And I think also like various Christmas presents over the years from people like, what do we get you? And I'd like go, get me this quite expensive magic trick. That'll be the one.
But like those magic tricks, it's not like do you buy them on Amazon, or there's like some special resource only for magicians, so like no muggles could see it.
No, you just go to a magic shop. They'll sell to anyone. They don't care. It's a business.
No,
I know. And then there's the explanation, and you go through it. The problem is, I've got what I like to think a really nice routine. I know my tricks really, really well, and I'm really happy with the way they are. What tends to happen is I find a new trick. I'm like, yes, I can include that. And usually what happens is, when you've seen it performed, you're like, oh my God, how could I not include this? And then what happens is, you get it home, you open it up and you go, oh, bugger. Because it turns out there's a set of very specific parameters, or there's limitations on the way you can or can't do it. And then, of course, when you realize, like, oh, this actually isn't going to fit my routine. Particularly as a close-up magician, I have very, very stringent rules on what a trick can and can't be for it to be in my act. You know, it can't have a reset time. So if I finish the trick, I can't spend any time getting the trick back into a state where I can perform to the next table. I have to go straight to the next table. I don't get that time. So it's not like a stage magician where everything can be prepped to do what it is and then it's ready to go. Similarly, so that's the reset or reload time. It also can't be big and bulky because I have to be able to carry it with me without it being obnoxious, and which of course can be quite limiting. And then of course there's not only that, it's how stable is it? You know, is it going to break easily? If someone from the audience grabs me or it, how much can it take? You know, how much handling can it handle? Yeah. One a better way of putting it, but there you go. You know, because I've worked with props in the past which are fragile and they break and then you're stuffed. You know, there's nothing you can do about it. So we're a deck of cards. I carry a spare.
Do we have some magic tricks for today? How many do we have? Like, I want you teach me a magic trick, but in the very end of the podcast. Is there anything else that you want to show before?
There's the trick I'll teach you and your subscribers, but there was one trick I thought there was the one that I would. There's one trick that I would do, as it were.
Maybe it's time to do some magic, because we were talking about the magic for a long time. Now it's time to actually, to see it. Yeah. Okay, so I'm switching places with you.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm taking the cards.
Yeah.
I'm not good with cards. I can't. Don't
Don't worry.
I can just pretend that I.
Okay, so here's what you're going to do. So you're going to hold the cards in your left. You're right-handed?
Yes.
Yeah, so hold the cards in your left hand. What you're going to do, take one card off the top and put it face down on the table. Perfect. Do that again. Take the top card and put it on top of that card. And do it again. You're going to create a little pile. Just keep going.
How many?
It's up to you, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. Tell you what, though, you can take them from the middle or the bottom or anywhere in the pack. So we create like a mix of cards as you go. Okay,
so because you had these cards on you before, so now because I don't trust you.
Well, of course. So yeah, you create like a mix of cards as you keep going through the deck.
Okay.
And yeah, you can go the whole way through the deck if you want, or you can stop whenever you like. Yeah? Okay, so yeah, gather them up into a little pile. And if you want to give me the other cards, you keep the cards that you take. Oh yeah, here we go. There we go. And now what you're going to do, pick them up. Now what I want you to do, we're going to deal them again, but this time I want you to copy me. So you're going to go like this. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're just going to keep going until you run out of cards.
Okay.
It's very exciting, I know. Fantastic. So here's the thing, this is why I love this trick, because you had the cards, you dealt the cards into a pile, you dealt the cards into 4 piles this time. Do you consider yourself a lucky person?
No.
Okay, so like theoretically, if you put yourself on a scale with ace at the bottom and king at the top, how far up or down with that scale would you put yourself? Like right at the bottom or?
No, I would say maybe like 9, 10, no, I mean 7.
7? Yeah. So right bang in the middle, lazy answer.
Yeah. I mean, like I know I'm not lucky, but I can't say that I'm really unlucky. But
Okay. Well, here's the thing. So I've always found this is a great test of someone's luck. Yeah. So look, turn over the top card on whichever pile you want. What have we got?
Ace.
Okay. So we've got an ace. That's not bad.
Don't tell me they're all aces.
Go on, pick another pile.
Oh, come on! They're all aces. All 4. How the...
You'll feel free to have a look at the rest of the cards as well. You'll see it's not a rigged pack or anything.
How... No... I hate you.
This is why it's one of my favorites.
Come on! There's just...
only 4 aces in the pack.
You were there. I did this. Okay, we're not getting the explanation for this one.
Not for that one.
No, and I don't want to know. All right, so switching back.
Yeah.
If you want to see Max perform live, you can book him for your event. You'll find Instagram and everything. Did you reply to messages on Instagram?
I reply to messages on Instagram, yeah.
So you'll find Instagram in the description and on the screen. Quick blitz round.
Okay.
Then you'll teach me magic. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Texting or talking?
It's supposed to be a bliss round. I'm not going very quick. It's probably texting.
Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Your one guilty pleasure?
Video games.
Not guilty.
It feels like it with a child around.
What makes you laugh?
Pretty much fucking everything. I find a lot of things hilarious.
What makes you angry?
Idiots.
Oh, you would go furious through life. Do you have any nicknames?
Meeks. Because I was like half Australian. Some friends at school, they started calling me Meeks. Oh, Meeks, what are you doing?
Is there a dish that you cook best, perfect?
Not necessarily actually, spaghetti bolognese. Fucking every time.
Nice. Your favorite character in any fictional story?
Goku. Goku from Dragon Ball Z.
Okay. Star Wars or The Lord of the Rings?
Oh, probably Lord of the Rings.
Good. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Alien or Aliens?
Alien.
Do you have any other unknown unexpected talents?
Not things I can talk about on video.
Nice. How often do you cry?
Probably once every month or so, at worst, I say. I think it depends. Sometimes I have months where I cry a lot more.
All right. Okay, so I asked you yesterday to prepare for one cool thing, something that you like and you think our viewers or listeners should try it too.
I think I took that as like a cool fact, and the fact that came to my mind was that, I don't know if you know this, but 99% of German Shepherds are dogs.
What you say, 99%? 1% who?
1% are German Shepherds.
It's too funny. I think I spit on your table.
Otherwise, I think one cool thing would probably be board games, but I don't know if it's a cool thing.
Any particular board game?
Yes, Nemesis. It's a big one behind you.
You can show it.
Yeah, it's is that the right way up? Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. A bit dusty.
I can see it's very cool. You play it a lot.
It's because it takes about 12 hours to play.
Yeah.
So
one day will do it.
Yeah. So the next time I'm playing this is my birthday. So my wife has been very kind, taking care of my daughter and organising things so that I can have a bunch of people around on my birthday, and we're going to play this for pretty much the whole day.
Yeah. What's the game? What's the base?
Funny enough, it's basically Alien, but not copyright.
Yeah.
So
like the monster on the cover kind of looks alien-ish, but not really.
Alien-ish. If I can get out. It's the other thing is, aside from like the absurdly complicated nature of the game, because as you can see, there's lots of bits, which I love a complicated board game.
Yeah.
It's also the absurd miniatures. These are the aliens that you go up against, and there's like a whole bunch of these different types.
So good.
Yeah. And of course you can paint them. My wife and I have never gotten round to it, but it would be cool to do that. The other reason it's really fun, that I love it, is because when you're playing, you're actually not playing cooperatively. So it is everyone versus the game, but you also all get secret missions, and your missions could be kill player 2.
Nice.
And so for me, there's a lot of fun to be had. The last time we played it, because what happens as well, when someone dies, they take over the aliens, and my friend who died took over the aliens and then successfully blew up the ship and killed us after 6 hours of gameplay. Hugely depressing end to the day, but it was a lot of fun.
Nice. And where can you buy it?
I think most board game shops are online. I actually bought that in Australia because a friend of mine highly recommended it to us, and I think I've played it 6 or 7 times now, but because obviously the time commitment, it's hard to play it more often.
Well, it's definitely a cool thing. I love it.
There you go.
All right, now teach me magic.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll teach me the magic trick. You'll show it to me first.
Yes.
I'll be amazed. And then you'll teach me.
And then I'll walk you through it. And there's a reason I'll give you a handout, because there's lots of extra details that I can't really go into unless you're working specifically with someone.
Okay.
But there's no secrets here. This is all unveiled in a minute, not yet.
All right. All right.
So you start with a deck of cards. I'm going to get you to pick a card. It is normal deck of cards.
Yeah.
I say normal deck of cards. It's the deck of cards my brother and I created. But you go ahead. Take out any card. And don't show it to me. I'll look away. Despite I saw you take it, but you know what I mean. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want it back?
Yeah. Say stop.
Stop.
Okay. Fantastic. Just drop it there. And I'll close the pack up.
Yeah.
Could be anywhere in the pack. Now, don't worry, you don't have to learn how to do this next. You don't have to learn how to do that for this trick. I just like showing off.
Yeah.
No, see, being a magician, no one likes playing cards with me. And no one will like playing cards with you. And it's because we know how to cheat. So all I have to do, snap my fingers, and one card in the deck has now turned face up. I know you don't believe me, no one ever does. But if I spread the cards out, you can see one card has turned face up, the 6 of hearts.
Yes.
Don't worry, I know that's not your card. Because you see, I never said it would be your card that turned face up in the deck. I just said a card. No, see, the 6 tells me where your card is. See, 6, if I go like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, the 6th card, the Joker, is your card.
Yes.
But that's not why people don't play cards with me. It's these 5 cards here is the reason no one plays cards with me.
Okay. This is double impressive.
So I love this effect because it's very easy to learn, and there's lots of room for allowing the performance style to be the reason that people remember the effect. And all you have to do before the trick starts is prepare the deck.
Yeah.
So to prepare the deck, I'll show you first. So you take the 6. Or it doesn't have to be 6 of hearts, just any 6, and the royal flush of your choosing. So in this case, I've got the Ace of Hearts all the way to the 10 of Hearts. They go face down, the 6 goes on top, and the rest of the deck goes on top of that. The deck's now ready to perform. That's it. That's the whole setup. Then you have someone pick a card. So in this case, they're going to pick the King of Diamonds.
Wait a second. So the 6 is up now. But when you show when you told me pick up the card, I didn't see that it was up.
That's because there's a lot of cards in the deck, and if I go like this, you're not seeing the 6. It's all the way down here. So I can still spread quite a long way, and it's only if I really go far down you're going to see that 6.
All right.
And of course, so you can just go like this, and look, there's no way they're going to see that 6. So that's how you keep the 6 hidden on the bottom. Because obviously you don't.
So wait a second. When you said you prepared the deck, didn't you put the cards on top and the 6? You put them down.
Yeah. So you've got the royal flush on the bottom.
Yeah.
The 6 on top.
Yes.
And then everything else on top.
All right.
So then what happens is you have someone pick a card, which for the sake of argument this time is going to be the King of Diamonds.
Yeah.
And now I did this sort of thing. So throughout the performance I did there, I did a few things that will come further down the line of learning a bit of magic. But just for the sake of moment, so I went like this. I went say stop. You don't have to necessarily learn how to do this because it can be even just this, which seems quite a simple thing. You'd be surprised can be quite tricky.
Yeah.
Learning the placement of fingers and stuff. You can just do the kind of thing of having someone. You can just as you go, put your card there. The thing to remember is what you need to do is the card they've chosen has to go on what is the top of the deck. You just want to hide that fact. Because if I say to you, put your card on the top of the deck, that sounds super conspicuous. So what you do instead is if you cut the cards and say, put your card into the middle of the deck, as you then complete the cut on top. Okay. Which of course places the 5, the royal flush and the upside down 6 directly on top of their card.
All right.
Okay?
Yes. And the 6 is already turned, and that's how...
Yeah. So now the trick is done in many ways. So I talk about how you don't trust magicians because I snap my fingers and one card turns face up. Other people, you can dress it up however you like. Nothing wrong with that. Then what I do is I say, I make the joke about how I never said it would be your card, but that's only after I've gone through the deck and found that 6.
Yeah.
Now, upon finding the 6, it's very important you take this stack and you put it at the bottom, because you want it out of the way. You don't want to be dealing with it, because if you've still got it out here and you forget which way you're supposed to count, you're going to go the wrong way, because their card is beneath the 6.
Yeah.
So you take these ones, you put them on the bottom, they're out of the way, they're gone. You've now got the 6 and their card down there. You can make the various jokes about the 6. You can put the 6 down. I like to do this sort of thing because, again, it keeps it nice and clean down here, and the 6 is still nice and visible. And then you go, that's not your card, but it tells me where your card is. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can pause for a second, and then you turn over the card. There's that King of Diamonds again. I guess as you hopefully experienced yourself, you see the king and you're like, oh, he's got me. Oh, the magic. Damn him. You can let everyone, let the applause and the admiration die down a little bit, and you can sort of start tidying up. But don't let everyone go too far and say, but that's not why people don't play cards with me, or whatever your line is that you want to use. You say, the reason no one plays cards with me is these 5 cards here, and then you can show the royal flush.
That's so cool. That's so cool. How many of the tricks that you do? You know what? No, I don't want to know. No, I do want to know. You know what? I do want to know. Or maybe not. How often do you have to prepare your deck for the trick?
So for me, when I'm performing, never.
Never, because this is a trick for muggles.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
So if I was going, I have sometimes done this trick while performing a professional gig, and what I found happens is if I'm like, oh, actually, this would be a great fit, or I think I can squeeze it in, I'll set it up, I'll prepare the deck while I'm talking to the person, and that's become from long time of practice and getting the hang of things that I can do it as second nature. I can do things here, and because I'm not going, I've got to put this card in, this card's good. It's much more casual. I'm doing it while I'm talking to them and I'm fiddling with the order of the cards and stuff. They don't really question it.
Yeah.
And it's a good example of that. Again, it's not necessarily psychology, but it is a thing of, because I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, you have no reason to worry about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that comes from your sort of, if you start going like this, you're screwed.
All right, you know what? Before we end, do you want to tell more about the deck that you used for the trick?
Sure. So a few years ago, my brother's an artist, and he actually drew everything in this deck of cards. It's called the Battle of the Gods because we chose 4 different pantheons of gods to represent each suit. So, for example, if you look at the diamonds, they're Egyptian gods, and they've got hieroglyphs. My brother, he hand drew them all, so you've got this, so they actually had them translated, so that's Queen Isis, I think, and then with jacks we went with knave rather than jack, because knave translates better. J wasn't around a lot back then. I mean, obviously in Egyptian hieroglyphs it's not letter put to letter, but that's how we did it, because to create it, and you can see we hid little messages in there. The clubs are the Celts. The hearts are the Greek gods, so you've got Zeus, Aphrodite, and Athens. We were going to put Hera, but we realized Hera's not very recognizable. And so similarly with the other gods, they're not necessarily the queens and kings because they don't always fit into that structure, but they're the ones that we chose. We've got Thor, is the Jack of Spades. On Thor's hammer that he's holding by his side, there are 2 letters. One is M and one is T for my wife and my first name. And Athena on her sword is my mother's name, because she was a huge support in getting the deck out. And then we also did 4 jokers. Right? Normally a deck of cards has 2 advertising cards. We just turned them into jokers. So there's actually 1 joker for each suit. And if I had done my preparation, I'd remember, but we put a quote in the script of each culture, and so one of them is sort of like, trust your friends but always cut the cards. Things that, nice. The little things like that. And of course you've got each of the numbered suits, we've got elements. So the hearts for the Greek gods, because of Olympus being in the clouds, their element is air. The Norse gods is obviously water, earth for the Celtish, and fire for the Egyptian gods.
Nice. Where can people buy them?
So they are on Etsy and I think Indiegogo, but Etsy is probably the place to go. If you really want, we do sell prints as well, and then there's also a few uncut card sheets left if you want a big, huge fuck off thing for your wall.
Nice. Well, you'll find links in the description. Look, Max, thank you so much. It was so lovely. I know one more trick now. And
once you practice it, remember.
I'll have to, but you know what? Last trick that you showed me at one of the parties, I showed it to my friends, and one of them is, also knows a little bit of magic, and like obviously he was like, oh well, I know how you do it. You just need to know this card to know this card. I'm like, oh, well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, leave a comment about what you think about magic, and if you ever seen Max perform, leave a comment as well. Bye.
Guys, bye bye.